Part 65. Marching to War. Before heading to battle, the Quraysh gathered together around the Kaaba, held onto its cloth, and made dua.
O Allah, help whichever of these two tribes is more noble in your eyes. Send victory to whichever of these two groups is more honorable, and send your aid upon the better of the two tribes.
Allah indeed answered their prayers, and this dua is referenced in the Quran.
If you sought judgment, now it has come to you, and if you cease, it will be for your own good. But if you persist, we will persist, and your forces, no matter how numerous they might be, will not benefit you whatsoever. For Allah is certainly with the believers. Surah 8, verse 19.
1,300 men then marched out of Mecca, the largest number ever to march in unison, led by Abu Jahl. As Arabia was tribal, previous battles would typically comprise of dozens of fighters, and bigger wars between multiple tribes may consist of hundreds. But this was the first time in the history of Arabia that an army was marching in the thousands. They had over 100 horses, 600 suits of armor, and hundreds of camels. The Quraysh wanted to make a show of this power, bringing dozens of singing girls and beating drums. The Quran references their arrogance.
Do not be like those who left their homes arrogantly, only to be seen by people and to hinder others from Allah's path, and Allah is fully aware of what they do. Surah 8, verse 47.
Meanwhile, Abu Sufyan, still in the desert, sent another emissary to Mecca notifying them that the caravan was safe and that they were no longer needed. By this time, the Quraysh were already en route, camped outside Mecca. The message reached them, and the likes of Utbah ibn Rabi'a argued that there was no longer any need to continue, but Abu Jahl was adamant.
No, we will go to Badr, and stay there for 3 days. We will drink our wine, have women sing for us, and let the Arabs hear that we are a strong and mighty nation.
Despite this, some smaller tribes headed back, leaving 950 to 1,000 of the Quraysh to persist on. On the Muslim side, the companions left Medina expecting an easy raid of a relatively unmanned caravan. They did not prepare for, nor expect, a war. As they progressed, rumors began to spread that there was an army leaving Mecca ready for war. The Prophet began to quiz the companions, asking what they thought if the Quraysh were aware of their plan and ready to fight. Some of the companions expressed their reservations, citing that they were not properly armed. The next day, the Prophet asked again, and some companions again expressed their concerns. The Quran cites these doubts.
Similarly, when your Lord brought you out of your home for a just cause, a group of believers were against it. They disputed with you about the truth after it had been made clear, as if they were being driven to death with their eyes wide open. Remember, O believers, when Allah promised to give you the upper hand over either target, you wished to capture the unmanned party. But it was Allah's will to establish the truth by His words and uproot the disbelievers, to firmly establish the truth and wipe out falsehood, even to the dismay of the wicked. Surah 8, verses 5 to 8.
Allah gently reprimanded the companions, but still called them believers. They were the best generation to exist, but they were still human. The Prophet began scouting for further information alongside his closest confidant, Abu Bakr. This is the only recorded occasion where the Prophet personally scouted, signifying the high stakes of the situation at hand. They eventually came across an elderly Bedouin, and Bedouins were known for carrying information in the desert. The Prophet asked, "Do you have any information about the Quraysh and about Muhammad and his army?" The Prophet asked about both parties so as not to arouse suspicion. Replying in kind, the Bedouin said,
"First, who are you?"
The Prophet replied carefully, "I promise to tell you where we are from as long as you give us your information." The Bedouin then disclosed,
"Muhammad left on such and such date, and if so, he will be camped at such and such place. As for the Quraysh, their army has left Mecca on such and such date, and if so, they will be camped at such and such location."
The Bedouin's information about the Prophet was entirely correct, which indicates that his information about the Quraysh was equally as accurate. The rumors were therefore true. The Quraysh had sent their army in full, and war was on the horizon. The Bedouin then asked the Prophet about himself, to which the Prophet replied, "We are from water." He then immediately left, leaving the Bedouin in a state of bewilderment. The prophet utilized Tariya to protect himself, as he was referring to the Quranic verse,
"And we created from water every living thing." Surah 21, verse 30.
While excessive or unnecessary Tariya is discouraged in the Sharia, using equivocations in times of need is permissible to avoid lying, as utilized by the prophet and the prophets prior. An example of previous prophets using Tariya is the case of Prophet Ibrahim, telling his father that he was sick, implying physical sickness, in order to avoid attending a polytheistic festival, when in reality he was sick and tired of their polytheism. Surah 37, verse 89. The Prophet returned to the Muslim camp and prayed to Allah before addressing the companions. Throughout the Seerah, we note the Prophet's retreat to Allah in times of need before resorting to reliance on his creation. As the Prophet prayed, the companions captured 2 Qurayshi slaves. The companions interrogated them, and they disclosed that they were from the army of the Quraysh, to which the companions would beat them and say,
"Do not lie! You are from Abu Sufyan's caravan!"
The captives would relent and agree, but only to stop the beating, and the cycle would repeat. The Prophet eventually finished his prayer and said, "When they tell you the truth, you beat them, and when they lie, you let them go." The Prophet discouraged abuse in interrogation and ordered them to stop. He then began to ask the captives, "How many of you are there?" The captives pleaded that they were mere slaves and did not hold such information, so the Prophet asked how many camels were slaughtered per day. They said 9 or 10, to which the Prophet declared, "They are 900 to 1,000. The Prophet then asked who was amongst them, and they began to list every nobleman of the Quraysh. The companions felt tense, as they realized the magnitude of the task before them. The presence of the chieftains necessitates wealth, resources, armor, and more. The Prophet, on the other hand, smiled. He knew that Allah's promise remained true.
And when Allah promised to give you the upper hand over either target, you wished to capture the unmanned party, but it was Allah's will to establish the truth by His words and uproot the disbelievers. Surah 8, verse 7.
If the chieftains of the Quraysh were all present, the victory will be even sweeter. He then said to the companions, "Mecca has presented to you the cream of the crop." When he saw the dejected look on some of their faces, he continued to rile up the troops. "By Allah, so-and-so will be killed over here," pointing, "so-and-so will be killed over there, so-and-so will be killed over here, and so-and-so will be killed over there." He named them one by one, pointing to different locations. He then asked the companions, "What do you think we should do?" The Prophet did not need to employ consultation, shura, but the benefit of doing so was twofold. First, his addressees would feel empowered and respected, and second, he was teaching his ummah the art of leadership. Abu Bakr immediately stood up, praised Allah, sent blessings upon the Prophet, and spoke words of encouragement and support. The Prophet thanked him and repeated the same question, "What do you think we should do?" Umar then stood up, and like Abu Bakr, uttered words of support. The Prophet thanked him and asked the same question again, and Al-Miqdad ibn Amr, another muhajir, stood up. He perhaps thought that Abu Bakr and Umar were not convincing enough, so replied emphatically,
O Messenger of Allah, do as Allah commanded you, and we are right behind you. O Messenger of Allah, we will not say to you as the children of Israel said to Musa,
"So go, both you and your Lord, and fight. We are staying right here." Surah 5, verse 24.
Rather, we say, Go, both you and your Lord, and fight. We are right behind you. O Messenger of Allah, take us to all corners of the world, and we will follow you, until we meet Allah's decree.
The Prophet thanked him and asked for the 4th time, "What do you think we should do?" Silence ensued. Then the great leader of the Ansar, Sa'd ibn Mu'ad, stood up saying,
"Perhaps you are intending us, O Messenger of Allah."
At the covenant of Aqaba, the Ansar pledged to protect the Prophet from all aggression, but the Battle of Badr did not constitute defensive jihad, so it was technically outside the fold of the pledge. The Prophet did not want to force the Ansar to continue, as they did not pledge to partake in this type of combat. The Prophet replied in the affirmative, that he was indeed referring to them, and Sa'd said,
O Messenger of Allah, we believed in you and trusted you. We testified that you have come with the truth. We gave you our promises and oaths that we will listen and obey. So go forth and do as you see fit, for we are with you. I swear by the one who sent you with the truth. Were you to take us to the ocean and charge galloping into the sea, we would go right behind you. We are not scared to meet the enemy tomorrow, and we will show you our patience in battle. Perhaps Allah will show you through us that which will comfort you. So go forth upon the blessings of Allah. We are right behind you.
The Prophet's face was described as a shining moon, overjoyed with Saad's response.